All right, I will call the Finance, Ways and Means Budget Committee hearings back to order. And with that said, members, let me just remind you, be sure to log in to your screen in front of you. We want to make sure we have everybody on the dashboard up here in case you do want to ask the department a question. Without further ado, without objection, we will go out of session to hear from TDOT. So without objection, we are out of session. I'll ask the department commissioner if you'll move forward and bring your team up with you, and we'll begin by introductions first. And I'll just remind you guys that we will control the microphone from up here. So you'll just wait till the red light comes on the microphone, and then you will be ready to proceed. Again, thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. Thanks to the committee for having us this afternoon. I am Commissioner Will Reed, Tennessee Department of Transportation. I'd like to take a second and allow this is part of my senior leadership team that's here with me today. I'd like them to be able to introduce themselves if it pleases the committee.
Yes, sir. Please go right ahead.
Good afternoon. Preston Elliott, Deputy Commissioner over the Bureau of Planning.
Good afternoon. Natalie Kristoff, Chief Financial Officer, Deputy Commissioner.
Delane Linville, Deputy Commissioner of Administration.
Joe Deering, Bureau Chief of Operations and Maintenance.
Good afternoon. I'm Lori Lang. I'm Deputy Commissioner of Program Development and Delivery.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Hicks. Again, the committee, we appreciate the opportunity to be here today. What we'd like to do is talk to you today. First off, express our gratitude for the support of not only this body and the General Assembly for the funding that has been so importantly entrusted to TDOT over the course of the last several years, but also talk about what we plan to do with those dollars and really show you that we're going to be good stewards of the dollars that have been entrusted with us. And then lastly, we want to outline our investment strategy should the General Assembly choose to move forward on passing the budget as requested. The first thing I'd like to do, I would be remiss if I didn't mention where we have been spending a lot of our time over the course of the last 2 weeks. I know that a lot of people have just recently had power turned on in this area. We saw a winter storm in Winter Storm Fern that was frankly historic in the impact that it had. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, we had to this point, over 149,000 labor hours spent by TDOT employees. Thousands of trees cleared. We just quit counting, frankly. It was too high. So we're saying thousands. 106,000 tons of salt, 812,000 miles driven by our TDOT employees, over almost 5,000 incidents managed by our help staff and maintenance and construction staff, over 1.8 million gallons of salt brine put on our system. In addition to these direct TDOT assets that have been employed over the course of the last 2 weeks, we also assisted local governments across the state, over 500 plus incidents that came through to us through TEMA as a result of the governor's emergency executive order that he made. So I would like to say that I'm extremely proud of our team at TDOT and the way that they responded. We had folks centered or come to Middle and West Tennessee from as far as Hawkins County, Tennessee, McMinn, Ray County, came to Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee to help their neighbors. Really, really appreciative of the impact that my staff made on this winter storm. Thank you. As we talk about I want to talk just for a second about how we have began investing the dollars that were entrusted to us last year for this fiscal year of 26. I'll highlight a couple of things. First off, you'll see on the left side of that page there, this is a truck. This is our new Rural Service Patrol vehicle. Hopefully some of you will be able to, or all of you are invited to our legislative breakfast on the 18th. We will have one of these vehicles there and an operator. These are the vehicles that through last year's general fund appropriation, we are able to service our rural interstates and rural state routes throughout the state to the tune of $16.7 million per year. Again, force multiplier for us, not just having help assets in the urban areas, but being able to manage those rural interstates. You'll start to see those in March in Region 2, which largely you'll begin to see them on sections of I-40 up and around the Cumberland Plateau, and then we will phase the other 3 regions in accordingly. Also want to mention our spot safety program. Part of the dollars we received last year, we put into spot safety projects across the state. And then also we were able to, through the dollars that we got last year and dollars we saved on projects in our 10-year plan that bid for less than what we anticipated, we were able to advance 56 paving projects for this summer. So you're going to see a lot of paving in your districts. Sure, you're going to get calls, but we want to stay on top of pothole season. They are in bloom as the weather begins to clear. Hopefully, there won't be as much of an issue as they were last year because of the investments we made. But again, we want to stay on top of those as we move forward. So in addition to projects, one of the other things we've been working on is not just putting more out, but working smarter. We have developed a much more nimble, more effective organization that's really focused on quick problem solving and empowering our employees. Our EPIC initiative, which is our overall department restructure, has resulted in a significant change in our turnover. You will see there in 2022, we were at almost 18%. We are now, as of 2025, we have reduced that to 8%. We've got a 92% retention rate with our employees. I would argue that this is competitive with most businesses you see out in the private sector that are considered to be successful. So we're very, very proud of that. I also want to talk about how we are ready when we are all about performance, readiness, and results. Let me give you some examples. In our major project area, and major projects is defined major by the Federal Highway Administration as anything over $500 million in size. A few years ago, the largest project let to contract just a few years ago, 2 years ago, in the history of the state was $186 million. Right now, we have a project in Memphis and Kings Crossing that will eclipse $1 billion in a single project. And we have a project on I-24 in our first choice lanes that's approaching $4 billion. So basically, our work has changed very much with the nature of the projects that we're delivering at TDOT. We felt like we needed to change with it to be able to deliver on that. One of the other smarter ways we're working, you'll see there in the center, I'm proud to tell you that you have the best operators at TDOT in the Southeast, 11-time Southeast Rodeo champions. We won back-to-back. This year, we were able to bring the title back to Tennessee. One of the reasons that's important is every year when our folks compete against 12 other Southeast states to be the best operators, these are many of the same people that respond when incidents hit like Winter Storm Fern or, God forbid, issues like Hurricane Helene. These are the best of the best, and we want to make sure that they're able to measure their skills up against their peers all across the Southeast. So again, happy to have the best there. I'm also happy to report that as of today, 48 of 49 routes that were initially closed during Helene are now open, and recovery continues in Upper East Tennessee. So in addition to working smarter, we also are focused on delivering as promised. We have implemented a culture of follow-through and finishing what we start at TDOT, and we're committed to that. As you can see from this graphic here, what this shows is this depicts projects that were in our yearly plan. It used to be a 3-year plan. It's now a 10-year plan. And then the percentage of those projects that actually went to contract in the year that they were planned. As you can see, in 2021 to 2022, we made a significant jump. So not only are we working smarter, we're working more efficiently to where when we say something is going to get done, we're putting the resources to doing that. The nationwide average for delivery for DOTs for these types of projects is 50%. The last 2 years, your DOT is operating at delivering 100% of the projects that we said we would in that given year. So again, something that we are very, very proud of. And why does that matter? Well, for us, one of our key things is trust with the public, trust with you, the people that pay our salaries. I expect our staff to deliver as promised, and we're putting our money where our mouth is. So with that, I'd like to take a second and ask Natalie Kristoff, our CFO, to just give a little bit of a refresher about how we're funded at TDOT.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, for the record, Natalie Kristoff, Deputy Commissioner and Chief Financial Officer here at the Tennessee Department of Transportation. So first things first, I really thought we needed to start off with talking about some of the financial challenges that we are currently facing and to really help determine how we came across our 2027 budget request. So taking a look at the breakdown in front of you on the chart, if you're looking at the left side, the greenish side, 50% of TDOT's funding comes from federal funds. What this means is federal funds are really restrictive and they come with strings attached. And what I mean by that is there's so many different buckets, very specific buckets of federal funding, and each one of those buckets comes with a very specific eligibility rule. What those really concentrate on are new construction and maybe some specific programs. What it leaves out is the maintenance of our roadways and also the daily operations of our roadways. So taking a look at that, if you look at the red side of the right side, that is really what we have to fund our maintenance and our daily operations. So I just want to take a moment before I move on. Without the help of the General Assembly and the governor, we've had multiple one-time general fund transfers over the last few years, and these funds have really made it important, and we could actually come out and do some major projects. We could do bridge repair, but those one-time general funds also allowed us to do the critical maintenance that was just so needed on our infrastructure. And if you look at that red side of the chart, there was no way that those state funds were going to be able to cover all of those costs. So as we now continue, we looked at the budget and how it's funded. It was also essential when we were building our 27 budget to recognize not only how we're funded, but really the impact of inflation and really what it's had on our ability to do business. And I know you guys have all seen this chart, and it is probably the best chart I know out there. It is simple. It's a simple line, but it really has a profound impact to show just how much inflation has skyrocketed. And it's not going down anytime soon. So again, that's why the continued support of the governor and the General Assembly is so important, because simply put, due to inflation, we are spending more money and we're really delivering less of our program. And as you're going to see on the next slide with our recurring revenue, we're going to continue to show that is a flat recurring revenue, and it did not increase with inflation. So this final slide here just really takes a look at our state user fee collections. Again, just to be showing you just really how flat our recurring revenues are. You can take a look at the top for gas, diesel, special petroleum, vehicle registration, go from 2023 to 2026, and there's really no significant growth there. Basically, we are the same amount of fuel consumption is happening year after year. And we all know vehicles have become more fuel efficient. So it's causing more wear and tear on our roadways, and we're not getting the funding to maintain those roads. But I know I've had all bad news, but now it's time for a little good news on this one. I want to wrap it up with some good news. If you take a look at that bottom line, there's the sales of the tires. And that starts this year in 2026. And you will see over there in 26, it shows about $80 million. And I want you to take a look at the bottom line of the percent change and go clear over to 26. And just take a look. They have two numbers sitting there. The first one is without the tax being diverted over to us. We were actually showing a -% growth in our revenue collections. But thankful to the General Assembly and the governor, it is showing us a 6% growth from the year prior. So what does all this mean? Well, without the one-time funding that the fund transfers each year, the department's revenue is just flat and it's not growing. And with inflation, it has really caused us to really look at how we budget. And we wanted to make sure that we were taking all of these considerations into the fact. And when we asked for the additional increases, which Commissioner will be talking about shortly, we really wanted to show you that we took all considerations into order. Okay. And I'm going to turn it over to the Commissioner now. Thanks.
So to the committee, this is an overview of what was in our governor's budget. So you will see the dollars there for aviation as well as investments in rest areas and welcome centers. Again, in our transportation projects, they're both in form of 25 million recurring and $400 million non-recurring. We're gonna go into some detail on what each one of those are. And the first one I'd actually like to ask Preston Elliott to talk about the aviation component.
Thank you, sir. Yes, if you look on the slide here on aviation investment, it's actually 56.2 million. In 2021, we undertook a statewide aviation plan looking at all of our both general aviation and air carrier. In Tennessee, we have 72 general aviation airports and 5 commercial air carrier airports. We're actually soon to have 6 in Jackson. But for the purposes of this particular line item, I just want to point out that 8.2 million is for general aviation and 48 million of non-reoccurring is for the air carriers. That's the 56.2 million. Just want to separate the two. So in the 2021 study, it indicated roughly about $50 million annually needed for general aviation airports. So accounting for the reoccurring of 23.7 and 18.1 million of federal FAA funds, that gets you to the 50 million for the general aviation. We do know, much like Natalie has shown relative to inflation, we are also experiencing that on the aviation side as well. Just to recap on the 48 million of the 56, 59.5 of reoccurring for air carriers, 17.5 from the Transportation Equity Fund, bringing that to 125 million for the air carriers. The air carriers develop a strategic plan amongst the 5 airports and utilize those funds to make their investments.
So the next one I'd like to hit is there was a ask in our budget and $165 million proposed. It's actually, it's in the capital budget, but what that $165 million is for is the department plans to work with the Department of General Services as well as tourism to develop a plan to either refurbish, repurpose, or update all of our welcome centers and rest areas across the state. There's several of those rest areas that have not been touched since they were originally built in the 60s when the interstate system was put in. They are in need of repair. Maintenance costs continue to be an issue. It's something that I know since back to my time as chief engineer when Commissioner Ely was here, it's something that we've wanted to get to for quite some time. We're really excited about the ability to have budget in here to work with tourism and with general services to be able to tackle that. Next, and I'll mention these 3 together and then go into them specifically. $75 million. This would be made up of the $25 million recurring request, as well as $50 million from that one-time pot of 400. That $75 million that we would put into maintenance, and I'll talk about that in more detail. Then 150 towards critical bridge investments, and the balance of 200 would go into our highway program, or what most folks have gotten to the point where they understand as 10-year plan projects. So let's talk about the maintenance item first. As I said, it's made up of $25 million recurring, so that'll be every year. But the first year, we identified $75 million in additional maintenance needs that we need to be able to fund. So basically, what we did was put those two together to fund 1 year of the maintenance that we needed to get to the level of service that is being expected. And again, these maintenance costs are also subject to the same inflationary pressures that Natalie mentioned in terms of our entire construction program. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about everything from culvert upgrades on some of our 3-digit state routes to pothole repair, vegetation management, sign replacement, sign repair. This is what we commonly refer to as our routine maintenance across the state. Why does it matter? Well, very simply, if we have safe roadside hardware on our facilities in terms of guardrail and end treatments, it makes for safer facilities. But also, our objective here is to lengthen the asset life of all of our roadways. If we are putting dollars into maintenance, it stands to reason that the long-term costs of being able to repair those facilities goes down if we invest in maintenance now. The next one is our critical bridge investment. I'll draw your attention. Hopefully you can see it on the graph. You'll see that there's a section of green in this graph. What that green represents is 2 years of $75 million each year, $150 million into our bridge program. And what you will notice there is the line begins to trend up because of this investment, the green line. You will see it begins to fall off again. What is depicted here is our overall bridge condition across the state. And I want to make sure that folks understand that this is all bridges. This is not just bridges on TDOT's system. TDOT, as the state DOT, is responsible for the health of our bridges across the state, all 20,400 of them. The federal government requires that we inspect and maintain, or not maintain, but we inspect those bridges and assist in maintaining on some of those local structures as well. So what this investment would do, what you see in that green line, is where the red line crosses the dotted line across the center. That is the point at which, if we drop below that threshold. Is that it? So can we have the money and is that it? Okay. So if that line, that condition line crosses that threshold, we're required by federal law to spend normal program dollars on our bridges across the state. So in effect, before the green line was added, long and short of it is, before this funding was put in here, we were looking at crossing that threshold in 2030. This would allow us to advance that point out past 2035. So again, a critical investment that allows us to be able to keep bridges in better condition longer. And one of the things I would like to say about this is we are working internally to look at particularly off-system bridges. There were numerous those of you that were here during the Improve Act know there were numerous off-system bridges that were listed in the Improve Act. Our structure staff and program development staff are looking internally at how many of those bridges could we address with this $150 million? I don't have a number for you today, but I wanted to give you some insight into what we are looking at. From the funds that we have received over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, we have been able to put some money into a lot of our on-system bridges. Those off-system bridges, the counties and rural communities are continuing to struggle to be able to fund those bridges. We have a vested interest because we as a state DOT are responsible for their condition as well. Not only that, I've heard from many of you and had discussions about working down that Improve Act list. So our goal at this point is to take that list and see how many of those bridges we can get replaced out of that $150 million, and we'll be able to report back on that in the near future. Lastly, I'd like to talk about what's left is the $200 million. Really what this would do is this allows us to add the next ranked, next ready, highest impact projects to the 10-year plan. We're not making any assumptions on what those projects would be or that this money would be available to us. But should it be available, what we would do with the remaining 200 is look at what are the next projects that would come in to the 10-year plan. Like we've done every year since 2023, should this budget be accepted and passed by this body, we would return to the General Assembly with a 10-year plan of how those dollars would fit in. So what I'd like to hit on this slide is I want to make sure again that everyone here knows how grateful the department is for the investments that this body and this governor has made. And I will just say this, in my 26 years in this business, I have never seen, while working for the department as a consultant and now working at the department, I've never seen the commitment of these kinds of funds in this short a period of time that I have from this General Assembly and this governor. It truly is historic. So I just want to make sure that everyone here knows we are going to be good stewards of those dollars going forward, and we're going to always outline the investment strategy that we have for these funds. So this graph is depicting, some of you have seen it before. The data points here are our letting totals in a given year. So this is what actually goes out in the form of a construction project. If you look at the peaks of this graph and what is shaded, those are results of the investments that the General Assembly and the governor has made since 2023. You can see that not only are they historic, they have allowed us to jumpstart to jumpstart the effort to be able to get the transportation system in Tennessee where it belongs. Now, obviously, you get out past 2030, we've got a long-term issue that we need to continue to discuss about how transportation gets funded. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the historic steps that we've taken go a long way to getting this transportation system where it needs to be. And, oh, by the way, in all of the talk about the funding and all of those things, one of the things that is still going on out there that I'm sure there will be a question about that we have yet to see how it will come to fruition is when y'all passed the TMA in 2023, it gave us the ability to leverage private sector dollars to build big projects. We've got a very exciting date coming up in the fall of this year. We will get to commercial close on our first revenue risk P3. And what I can tell you is there's a tremendous amount of interest in the state of Tennessee from private investors investing in transportation, which is extremely exciting. I think there are going to be other opportunities there. You know, we feel like we have a good opportunity to build a $4 billion piece of infrastructure along I-24 that will hopefully be able to pay for itself. And we think things are trending in that direction. So again, just wanted to say we appreciate the opportunity to be here. When you make historic investments in TDOT, I think you can see that we are going to deliver. Again, I appreciate your time. We'll be glad to take any questions you may have.
All right, Commissioner, thank you very much. Appreciate your comments and your slides. We do have several folks on the list, and we'll begin with Chairman Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Reed and your team. I appreciate that very much. I want to thank y'all. I was going to largely ask about the $425 million, 400 non-recurring and the 25 recurring, but you've done a really good job of spelling those out over slides number 11 through 14. So thank you very much for expressing that. I do want to jump on something that you said just a few moments ago, and I'll jump to slide 15 and for my colleagues to take a look at that. The investment that we have made, the $3 billion in the Transportation Modernization Act, and the current budget document, the $1 billion, $4 billion plus over the last 3 budget cycles have really given us an opportunity to raise what we do with transportation and TDOT. And I think you used the word leverage, both leverage private funding as well as leverage federal funding. When you look at the Kings Crossing Bridge in West Tennessee that's desperately needed, we were able to partner together $250 million of state funds. Arkansas matches that. And then essentially the federal government is matching our 2 funds combined. So it's incredibly important. I want to ask you a little bit about that leverage and what if we just made those funds recurring? What would that happen with that valley that we're seeing out there in the year 2030, 2031, 2032? I fear for my colleagues. I'm not sure if I'll be here, but hopefully I'll be here at that time. I guess the question is, what's the value in having those funds recurring as we've seen most recently?
I think any head of a DOT that was sitting before you, whether it was Tennessee or otherwise, would tell you because these projects take a long time to develop, long-term sustainable funding it's easier to be able to plan. However, what I would say is whether it's one-time dollars or recurring, just like we did in 2023 when we developed a 10-year plan that showed how we were going to leverage those dollars. I have an agency full of very smart, bright people and a lot of engineers. You give them a problem, they're going to figure out a way to fix it. So what I can tell you is while it would make it easier to plan long-term, I think, I'm one agency in a big state government where there are a lot of needs. And, whatever those dollars we get, whether they're recurring or one time, we're going to put them to good use.
Chairman Hogg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've got a bill. And this committee's heard me say it ad nauseum. I'm not going to say it anymore, but I feel strongly that we need to ensure that our citizens, my daughters have the roads to drive on in the not too distant future. And it's something we need to do. And if we can be innovative and lead the country really in creating these recurring dollars with a natural index to it, not something that the legislature has to come back time and time again, but if we can create something with a natural index to it to make these dollars recurring, I'm going to do everything I can to do that. So really, you've addressed my questions. I do want to go down the vein of, or line of something completely off the wall and not funding, but talk about a little bit about funding. Rail transportation. That's something that doesn't get a lot of conversation within this committee or even some of our other committees. But the Transportation Equity Fund, we've got long lines, short lines, things of that nature. I know we've got a lawsuit that's conversing as part of this conversation, but several $1 million in this equity fund. Can we get a definition of where we see those funds? I'm specifically asking on behalf of the short lines. I know they're very interested in this.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Preston Elliott to speak to that.
Very good question. Appreciate. So we work very closely with the short lines. We also work with the class ones as well, but we have a rail safety preservation program that we work with all 21 rail lines and 16 authorities. Your question is pretty timely. In 2021, $85 million was provided as part of the fiscal year 2022. And that was based on our needs assessment, which showed about $300 million of need on our short line system, everything from rail, crossing the ties to bridges on the short lines. And working with industry, basically taking the dollars that we had in the equity fund and the 85 million, coming up with essentially a $20 million annual program. And this is the last year of those dollars. So we will have expended all 85 million of those one-time funds. It is currently the class ones, there is litigation, and the funding that is being put into it is being put into escrow, which basically means it's not available for our short lines. So that is a downside there. But we work with them. We think roughly based on the amount of money going in, it's around 3.5 million, but the need is closer to that 20 that we see.
Chairman Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for that answer. And we'll continue to have that discussion. Again, I want to thank you. The presentation that so far has been really good. And I got a bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks of Washington. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. Thank you for being here. Appreciate all you do, especially during the Hurricane Helene. Everything that took place was remarkable, so appreciate that. The department, in the proposed budget, there is about $1.5 billion of federal money that's in that budget. And I don't know if everybody remembers it or not, but there was a big government shutdown. Does everybody remember that? So during that time, it lasted about 43 days, the longest one in U.S. history. So I have two questions in that. You know, what lessons was learned that we can move forward on that 43-day shutdown? What did we learn during that? And what is TDOT's plan if that happens again, you know, for the $1.5 billion that is in the budget? What's the plan if that's interrupted again in the future?
So I'll start out and I'll let Natalie speak to this. The reality of that situation is we are very fortunate in Tennessee that we have had fiscal management that put us in a position where we have cash. We had the funds on hand to be able to weather that storm. Some of our colleagues across the country were not so lucky. So as far as what we've learned, I think it's more of what's been reinforced is the fact that good, sound fiscal management gives us the ability to weather those storms when they happen. But that is something that when those discussions were going on about the shutdown, Natalie and I talked quite often. And my question to her was, okay, so we've got that we've got that cushion. How far can we make it before it becomes a real issue? And we would be in constant communication with our federal delegation about the urgency of that. But I'll let her speak to any.
Yeah, I don't know how much more I can add to that, but the fact that we had a plan, every continuing resolution, we would see how far out we could go with the money we had. And if we got to that point where there was still a shutdown, then yeah, we were going to have to make some choices. But like he said, due to the fact that we are so financially stable, that we were able to cover those initial federal funds until the government reopened. But we are in constant looking at just seeing how this is, because you're right, it is a little volatile right now of whether it's staying open or not, but we have a plan and we're always looking at it to make sure that we have the state funds to cover, and then we can make the decision at a later date when we need to.
I would offer one other piece of context. If you remember back to the slide, Jay, if we can go to the slide with the funding mix.
Mhm.
So when you talk about how the federal dollars impact us, you heard Natalie talk about the eligibility. So that left side of the pie, the majority of our capacity projects where our larger projects or 10-year plan projects are funded out of those federal dollars. So what you would see if it got to that point where we could not weather shutdown, you would see those projects stop. Our maintenance and state of good repair happens out of our state funding side of that pie chart there. So we would be able to manage those, but projects would stop if we couldn't afford to float them, frankly, until the feds figured out what they were going to do.
Chairman Hicks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And along those same lines, the charts on page 27 is very interesting. And I just, I sort of throw out a challenge. I like challenges, and I think, part of this is competition. And these states here sort of, I consider them our competition. And it's very interesting that we're sort of short-sighted whenever we come to state funding on this. So I just throw out a challenge to the legislature and the committee to really look at this and we need to work on our state funding part of that so we can not depend so much on the federal government for the funds for our roads. So I'll just throw that out there and appreciate all you do. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Next on the list, we have Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. And let me say this, being a Shelby County, and I wanted to thank whoever it was that came up with the innovative name for the new bridge of King's Crossing. I've always thought that Jerry Lawler needed to be memorialized and honored in a true fashion. And that's really going to be one that stands for centuries there. And so on behalf of the King, thank you. Let's talk about the site. I refuse to call it the mega site at this point in time. We're just going to call it the site until our friends at our partners at Ford Motor Company figure out what they're going to do there. Can you give us an update on what the overall status of our response, the commitment that we made with regards to road improvements associated with that project at the site? And has there been any issues with spending the ARPA dollars from the feds we got associated with that?
So appreciate the question. The first thing is where we are with our commitments is we have spent, I believe, and I'll get the final numbers on this, but I believe it's just over 150 million of the 200 that was appropriated from the General Assembly. As you may or may not know, shortly after getting into the project, the scope of what Ford was asking for changed. The orientation of their plant changed. We were able to change with that and provide them the access that they needed. But all of their plans were based on a certain output of work and a certain number of employees coming in and leaving from the plant. Obviously, that has changed now. We remain in close contact with the Mega Site Authority and with Ford. The minute that that they are able to give us more clarity on what those plans are going to be, then we will be able to have a more detailed answer to your question. But at this point, we have fulfilled the commitments that they have asked for based on the changes they made to the plant. But again, I don't know any more than that at this point until Ford gives us some clarity on what the next phase of that project's going to be.
Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you for that. And those improvements there at the exit have greatly decreased congestion and allowed the deceleration for people getting off there. It's really cleaned up a safety issue. From my understanding, we spent about a quarter of the ARPA dollars that had been allocated for that project. Is there going to be a problem with us getting rid of the rest of them before the the expiration date on those funds from the feds.
Are you referring to the ARPA dollars that went to the counties?
It's my understanding that we had some ARPA dollars, $10 million budgeted for road improvements associated. I don't know if it flowed through the counties or not, but I know that we've only, as of the end of the year, we'd expended about 2.3, 2.4 million. And so have we got something we can spend that money on before we have to give it back?
It did flow to that is the money that flowed to the counties. We have basically operated in a technical advisory role to make sure that those dollars get spent on the things that they need to get spent on. I can get back with you on exactly how much of that is expended, but that did flow to the counties.
Thank you, sir. If you go ahead, just tell them to hurry up and spend some more so we don't have to supplement it. So that'd be great. We appreciate it. Thank you
Yes,
for your
sir.
answers.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner, and your team for being here today. I do have a couple questions, but I don't know if we're close in age, but there was a time in 1993 where we were trying to get back from spring break, and there was a blizzard of 93, they call it. Obviously, we spent a lot of money, did some great things. That's related to what happened the last 2 weeks. My question is do we have enough resources, or are they depleted such if we did have a blizzard of 93 and 26, we'd be okay? Or what are we doing to try to reestablish, a couple million gallons of brine that we've consumed?
So as far as our stockpiles of salt and brine, we are restocking as we speak. We're not having an issue with salt. I will tell you, I was on a call with CEOs from all across the Southeast last week, and frankly, we were one of the only ones that wasn't having an issue with that. I didn't offer up any help to my friends because of what you mentioned. So I think we're good on supplies. But here's what I will tell you. So every year we budget and plan for winter weather. We budgeted $31 million this year. We're at 29.9 right now.
That's what.
Now, that said, we're not going to not respond. We will figure out a way to be able to address that if we have another weather event. Our main objective is that folks driving on our roads can get to and from where they need to go the safest possible way. So we will have to make a decision down the road on, there may be other maintenance activities that may have to go to the back of the line, so to speak, but we are in the position and ready to address another snow event should we get it.
Okay, thank you very much. I know that there were some of us, not my community, but I did hear of a couple of communities where they had already ran out of salt by the time the third round of things came through. And so, but the local governments, if they have the ability to contract through you to get salt, they still can do that. Is that correct?
Yes, we've actually, we helped quite a few local governments across the state when they needed salt in this event. Again, I can't say enough about our team at TDOT, the folks that worked a lot of long hours that, went above and beyond to help their neighbors, whether it was our route or theirs.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to follow up on the P3 process. Obviously, we've, I guess, spent a little over $4.4 billion in 3 years as it relates to roads. When we were first talking about what the need was, we said it was $32 billion. We spent $4 billion. Now it's $38 billion. Some would say it's $42 billion. I guess my question about the P3 is, when we look at the backlog or that total dollar number, is as it relates to that backlog, are the P3 projects a part of that demand, or are they not a part?
They are.
Okay. So
They
if we are able to get this first P3 project, I think you said it was around $4 billion. If we're able to get it delivered, if our current backlog is 38, it's going to be 34 as soon as we get the contracts to do that.
Yeah. Again, depending on what makes up that backlog, because there's a lot of numbers that have floated out there.
Yeah.
When in 2023, the first number that was out there, Tasser came up with was $30 billion. The next year it was revised to $38 billion. When the governor asked me in our budget presentation, he asked me to look at what it would be over the next 10 to 20 years. And in our presentation to House Transportation, I lined out three main categories: urban congestion, finishing the Improve Act, and widening rural interstates. If you assume that those are the need, and that's another conversation, but if you assume those are the need, that in and of itself is $58 billion. It's not, to me, it's not whether it's 30, 38, 58. The important thing here is that there's a number out there that we are directionally correct, and that there is a significant number that we are chipping away at. What I would say is We would never get there if it hadn't been for the investments that we made. So we talk, I've heard a lot about, well, should we do this? Should we do that? There is not a one size fits all solution to this, and every state across the country is dealing with the same issue. One of the things that you brought up that I think we need to see how that plays out, and we'll have a very good data point later this year, is how is the leveraging of private dollars going to be able to impact that number? Because if we can get a $4 billion piece of infrastructure that cost nothing because of the revenue, it costs nothing to the state, that's a proven model because there are dollars out there in the private sector that are ready to be invested in transportation. It's truly transformative that we have that tool now available to us thanks to the TMA.
Is the 4.4, I call it 4.4, $4.5 billion that we spent over the last 3 years, is any portion of that encumbered knowing that we may have to make some investment in P3? And would that be freed up if you were able to negotiate with somebody to handle the entire cost?
Yes.
Okay. I want to jump ship really to rest areas, welcome centers. I have one of these adjacent to my community. It's like walking back in time, as a child. I don't think it's anything's changed about a lot of these across the state. My question is you mentioned that some of them are rebuild or renovation or modernization, some kind of update. How many do you expect the number of rest areas or welcome centers to increase over time, or is this mainly dealing with the ones that we currently have?
As I sit here today, I would say that the number of rest areas would likely decrease if you consider the way that the state has developed and when those were put in. In a lot of cases, those were out in the middle of the country. And that's not necessarily the case these days. So some of those we feel like could be repurposed. And when I say repurposed, one of the big issues we have on our interstates is the lack of truck parking. Those of you that travel, and most of you do up and down our interstates, you will see trucks parked on interstate ramps. You'll see them parked on entrances and exits to rest areas. There is a lack of parking out there. So from our standpoint, the state owns that asset. If we do not need a rest area, it's at least worth looking at, can that be repurposed for truck parking from a safety standpoint? So that's one of the things we're going to be looking at. Simply put, for what we're going to do is work with tourism and general services to maximize the benefit that we can get out of that $165 million.
Okay. That was going to be my next question about tourism. I guess because we don't necessarily have a comprehensive list of where we're going to make these investments now, but we will have partners in other areas of state government to make sure that we're spending the money well, because tourism, I'm assuming, is the ones that's going to operate these as well.
They operate the welcome centers.
Okay.
We actually contract for the operations of the rest areas.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. I've got two questions. My first question has to do with litter. I'm talking about trash along our highways. It seems like we've got a lot of it. I periodically go to other states. I've been recently to Alabama and Florida and North Carolina. I drove through Virginia to go to the inauguration a year ago. And it seems like we've got a lot more trash along our highways than other states. Department of Tourism will come in here soon and we'll talk about all the tourists in our state and how beautiful they all think Tennessee is, but I don't think they've noticed the trash, and I'm a little embarrassed over it. And so my first question is, what would be the best way to get this trash picked up?
So some of the dollars that y'all passed last year and the $80 million recurring, we actually added another mowing cycle on our state routes, which has litter in it as well. Actually, I believe that was interstates. Where's Joe? Oh, he's right there. Sorry. Joe, sorry, I got a lot of folks here. Joe Deering, our Bureau Chief over Operations. Joe, do you want to speak to litter? We talk about it a lot.
Yes, sir. So last year under the 80 million, we put a additional $6.4 million into mowing and litter. That allows us to do more cycles of litter each year along our interstates. One of the problems we do have is what we call large litter. We run the interstates or the urban interstates sometimes daily to pick up couches, refrigerators, you name it, that either fall out of the back of people's truck or they push them out of the back of their trucks. We do recognize that is an issue. We have made plans, again, with the 6.4 million, but also with additional money that the commissioner talked about this year is to increase that large litter run along our urban interstates.
If I may add one more thing that we've added is, sorry for the acronyms. We call it a PBMC. It's a performance-based maintenance contract. We actually added 2 of those here in Region 3, kind of as a pilot program, one north of I-40 and one south of I-40. And what we've done is structured a contract to bring in the private sector to put a performance spec on. This is what we want the interstate to look at. We have a really hard time being able to recruit and maintain resources in the urban areas where the litter is the worst. So we've actually engaged the private sector in doing that. I'm happy to say we are going to do our next performance-based maintenance contract in Shelby County this coming year. Litter is a big issue there for us. So we are looking at investing, to answer your question, we're investing more and more dollars into additional litter pickup.
Well, that's encouraging, and thank you. It sounds like we're billions of dollars behind on the road construction, but maybe a couple of $1 million would make a difference. And my second question has to do with how other states are funding their roads. You showed a graph earlier that showed that about half of our funding comes from the federal government and about half comes from the state. But there's other states out there that maybe only 25% comes from the federal government and 75% comes from the state, like Florida and Texas and North Carolina. And so I guess my question is, how are those states funding roads differently than Tennessee? I can see several options. Maybe those states allocate more money out of their general fund. Another option would be maybe these states have certain taxes that we don't have that are specifically allocated for roads. Another option is these states may be in debt over their roads. We've been talking about how we're $38 billion behind on our roads, but we don't have any debt. I suppose another option would be for us to be completely caught up on our roads, but be $38 billion in debt. So I guess my question is, how are these other states doing it and among those options?
So you just hit nearly all of them. And every state's a little bit different. And I mentioned earlier, there's not a one size fits all answer to this question. I think you have to find the mix of options that fit, whether it's the fiscal philosophy of your state or the level of service that you want. I mean, look, the needs can mean very different things to different folks. I mentioned earlier about 3-laning rural interstates across the state. I mean, that's 650 miles. Is it a need to do all of them? That's debatable. So I think one of the first things we have to do in quantifying this need is we need to let TASER do their work. They're doing a study right now, whether it's 30, 38, whatever the number is. We need to look, they're looking at this from economic impact of transportation. They're looking at this based on need. I think we need to let them do their work to really quantify what that need is. The other thing that they're going to do is some of that work of looking at other states, which we frankly do quite a bit as well, on how they fund their program. But it truly is a mixture across the board. I mean, you can look at states like California, which I'm definitely not advocating, who borrow everything and pay a ton of their budget and debt service. I am very fortunate. I don't have to pay a bit of our budget and debt service. Every asset we have is paid for. That's very good. So I think you have to find the right mix. I think, again, this state took a huge step in leveraging the ability to get private dollars through the TMA. And I know it can be, at least it's frustrating for me, these projects take a while to develop. We're going to have a good data point this fall as to how private industry values the opportunity for funding in transportation in Tennessee. So I think we've got to let TASER do their work. We've got to continue to look at these other states and frankly find the thing that best fits Tennessee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner and all of your team. I just want to give kudos once again to the effort y'all put forth a couple of weeks ago. It's not often you have an event like we saw over in West Tennessee and you see no criticism of how the state responded. All I saw was accolades of how TDOT worked and the job they've done. And I'm very proud of the guys up there in the district that I represent. When it comes to counties and how that they're responsible for these bridges that you were mentioning earlier, are y'all looking outside of the box? Obviously, the bridges that we build, are they looking? I know Jeff Jones is my road commissioner, and some of the state shared plans or however however y'all work together on those. are you looking outside of the box on allowing some of the different ways to put roads over waterways rather than bridges, like tanker cars, culverts, and things like that? Because I know he was telling me at one time he had several bridges that he was needing to replace, but he could not if he replaced them with tanker cars, that would take them off of the state aid. If you follow what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
I do. I mean, one of the things we want to make sure that we do, look, these counties are, they have a tough job when it comes to these bridges. I mean, they have a big enough job to keep their roads paved, but these bridges for them are a lot of times budget busters.
Right.
And we saw the rating requirements through the Federal Highway Administration change recently, and you've all probably noticed that more and more bridges are being posted these days because of the way they're being analyzed. So what I would say is we operate as a technical resource to those counties. We want to make sure that whatever investment they make or we make is going to last the design life of 75 years. So you get to a point where if we can replace a small bridge with a culvert, we would like to be able to do that. But again, it has to meet the requirements that the feds hold us to.
So there's nothing we can do here at the state level, though, to alleviate some of those burdens then? Is that what you're saying?
I don't follow the follow-up.
Well, is there anything we can do at the state level to alleviate some of those burdens or those restrictions or those regulations that the counties have to live by in order to replace a bridge?
Well, I don't. My initial answer would be no. I mean, their standards are they mirror ours. I mean, when it comes to risk areas, I would no licensed engineer would sit here and tell you that relaxing regulation, particularly when it comes to bridges, would be a good idea. But that said, I do think there are technologies out there, and I think that's one of the things you're referring to,
Right.
that we could implement. I have challenged our engineering staff, our structures division, to be more open to what some of those are. I mean, the reality is the finances say that we have to, as far as what's there. So we're always open to that. But at the same time, we don't want to spend $2 million for a structure that we'll only get 20 years out of when we can spend 3 and get 60.
Absolutely. And I think we all agree to that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that there's not anything that we have on the books that would prevent that or prevent your engineers from being able to experiment with new technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And once again, thank you for your hard work over the past month.
Well, and thank you for the kind words. You were one of the calls I received in the midst of everything that was going on, and it was appreciated. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the list is Speaker Zachary. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, thank you to you and your team. I think in my tenure, there have been 5, maybe 6 TDOT commissioners under Commissioner Ely. You notice a significant difference under his leadership. But so those numbers prove that leadership does make a difference. And since you've been in the second chair and now in this seat, you've made a significant difference. The engagement with TDOT, at least from my perspective, from the top has been at a much higher level. So thank you for your leadership and your engagement.
Thank you.
Just to quickly talk about Knox County, what happens in Knox County and the mess that we have significantly impacts all of East Tennessee. And many of my colleagues have to drive through Knox County to come to the Capitol and go home. Trail of Tears. That was funny. So just can you update on some of the progress we've made over the last couple of years under your leadership, specifically how responsive you guys have been? I know we've got the only project in the 10-year plan that is actually not funded, but we got that in the 10-year plan. The expansion of 40, the way stations that's caused such an impact, the upgrades of Campbell Station, Watt Road, and again, that has such an impact on all of East Tennessee in that corridor. Can you just give an update and talk about that a little bit? We had a regional chamber event a couple of weeks ago with Blunt, Loudon, and Knox, about 1,000 people there. And that was the number one topic, is just infrastructure specifically in Knox County. And with the fact the New York Post said Knoxville's the number one place to come for the next couple of years. So just impact where we are, the progress, and what you see the next steps being over the next few years, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I appreciate the words as well, Chairman, or Speaker rather. You can see here on your screen, this is the schedule for kind of where we've been towards the end of 2025, but also what is coming up. We're getting very close to having a preferred alternative for that corridor there. As you mentioned, there is only partial funding for this project. As a matter of fact, right before we came over here, we were having a planning discussion about dollars in the program, and I-40 West was one of the ones that came up. Where we're getting close to this point where we're going to have to make a decision about how we're going to fund the rest of that corridor. And as you and I have talked on numerous times, you can fix Watt Road and Campbell Station, but you're really not addressing all of the needs within that corridor. You have to address the throughput there in the corridor, as well as that way station that is there. So we have an entire team dedicated to working on just this project. We're excited about it. We think that there is the potential that while this may not be a fit for a revenue risk type of choice lane project, this could potentially be a state-run choice lane project where there could be some revenue source that offsets the cost of the project. Again, that will shake out in the alternatives analysis that, as you can see here by the schedule, we're getting close to having. So we should be able to give a more detailed update. And I'll be glad to work with you on the next chamber event and kind of come and update those folks on where this project stands. But it's blowing full steam ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Next on the list, Chairman Hale, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here and for all the work that your team's done. I want to give a shout out to Jay Klein for his always being available and response that Jay does. First of all, exit 258, Gornsville, Carthage exit. We've just had a major investment there. When we talk about the site in West Tennessee, we've got a major investment there and of private dollars that's been invested in the mine. So that's more traffic, employees, trucks, everything. So is there a way that, since that's on the 10-year plan, is there a way with that kind of escalating that to move that plan up and get that expedited quicker?
I'd be glad to look at that project and the things that you're talking about. I don't know if James knows the year off the top of his head. James Kelly is our program director back here, but we can get that information. I'll be glad to get with you and look at that. As you said, it is in the plan. That's one that's been talked about a while, and it is moving forward, but I'll be glad to have a conversation offline with you about the specifics of that and see what we can do, if anything. Again, if y'all remember discussions about the 10-year plan and how we developed it, it is a fiscally constrained plan, and all these projects are like little Tetris pieces that you're trying to fit in the right spot where they fit every year based on the size of the project and the needs of it, where it is in the development process. But we're always glad to look at those. The other thing about it, these plans have to be dynamic, whether it's an industry in your case that comes in, whether it's a Blue Oval in West Tennessee, these things happen all the time. We have to be nimble enough to react to those. So we have designed the plan such that we can do that in those cases, and I'll be glad to work with you on that.
Okay. One more question if I can, Chairman. On the expedited projects that you've got, about the 56 pavement projects, do you have a list of those that are specified? And I've got one that actually I drive across it every day. It's in Chairman Boyd's district, but I drive through it, and I know he probably hears a lot about it. Is 70 from DeKalb County down to I-40. Rough as a corn cob, and been a lot of patchwork, but it's just all the pieces down through there. So is that been discussed?
Yeah, so I'd have to I will refer you to, we have a 3-year resurfacing plan on our website that lists all the projects that we're planning to do over the next 3 years. And these 56 projects were actually added to that plan as a result of the dollars that came in. I don't know that project specifically, but again, if you can give me some limits on it, I'll be glad to look at that. And if it's not, tell you when we are planning to get there.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. Next on the list, Leader Camper. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. When I'm back in a district, the one question I get asked most often is, when are they going to finish Elvis Presley Boulevard? My God. Do you all have a timeline for that?
I can get you a timeline for that. The project goes back to, it was first in a 3-year plan in 2013.
I know.
And it is a locally managed project.
I understand.
So that has been we've gotten 2 of the 3 pieces done, but it has been a bit of a chore.
Absolutely.
Getting to the finish line there, but I get asked about that. I'm from Memphis. I get asked about that project a lot. So, but I can get back to you on specifics. But it's one we're pushing. We have local partners on that, but we are pushing to get it done.
I appreciate it. I have a community meeting, neighborhood association meeting I gotta go to, and they want answers. So I was thinking maybe, I told them I'd reach out to the MPO, but I just thought I'd ask you, since I had you in front of me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second question is around the One Big Beautiful Bill. Was TDOT impacted by any funds that maybe had to revert back or reduced as a result of that? Was there anything happening with TDOT with respect to the funding from the federal government as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Not to my knowledge. I'll let Preston speak. But what I would say before he goes, the majority of our funding is in the federal highway legislation. So the IIJA is the current federal highway legislation that expires this year. It will be up for reauthorization next year. So it is a different piece of legislation.
Yes.
So I think the one you're referring to, there were several discretionary projects, grant projects that were removed from that particular bill. For the department, there was a discretionary grant of about 30-something million, which was going to go towards our materials application. So it truly was new monies to us. It wasn't anything that was taken away from the department, and it would have gone towards allowing us to look at some standards and specifications in and around low carbon material applications.
You recognize
Okay,
later.
thank you. Thank you for that, because I was curious if the money would have went away, would the state have to fill in, but since it was a grant, we're not going to be on the hook to do anything per se in order to see that project through.
Yeah, in that particular case, it was, we had a much smaller scale initiative in the material side, but when that initial IIJA had one that basically provided funding to states, but you had to apply for it. And so initially that was not the scale and the size of what we were looking at for that initiative. So really, we just went back to our normal review.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your patience. Just one last question, and you can get this to me offline. But I appreciate Chairman Vaughn bringing up, exit 42 right there where we did have to expand. And I went through a very challenging time with a constituent who was planning a project right there, and we eventually had to stop the project, eminent domain, and a lot of concerns. If I can get an update later, we don't have to be on the record here, but if we could talk about that later on to kind of see what was the end result, what happened with his family, invested over $1.5 million in that project that had to accommodate the changes that Ford decided to change what they wanted. So I'd appreciate that update. And then I think you did talk earlier about the other exit that we were supposed to create, but all of that is put off until Ford decide what their long-term vision is going to be now? Is
Yes,
that the
ma'am, that's
case?
correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, and the team for all that you do, and I mean every word of that. Truly appreciate you. Also, before I ask a question, I want to publicly send a shout out and a thank you to Jason over at Region 4 too. He's our go-to guy, and he always picks up the phone or always calls right back, and always takes care of things that we need taken care of. So I wanted to publicly make sure that we send him his attaboys and his praise and love.
Thank you.
And yeah, go ahead and give him a raise too. But I do want to ask, where are we in the conversation about passenger rail?
So I'll let Preston speak to this, but what I would tell you, we just met about being involved in a study on passenger rail from Memphis to Atlanta just the other day. Preston, you want?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you're probably aware, in 2023, TASR completed a statewide analysis looking at passenger rail. And in 2024, we, in partnership with Chattanooga leading the effort, Nashville, Memphis, went after what is called a corridor ID, and it's essentially seed money, planning dollars, $500,000, looking at passenger rail from Atlanta via Chattanooga, Nashville to Memphis. And so, as the commissioner mentioned, we actually had a conversation with the mayor of Chattanooga just the other week on this effort. But we are actively engaged in that process, along with the Georgia DOT, since it crosses two states. I don't know if you had any other specific questions.
Yeah, I drafted that legislation for the TASR study along, and my colleague drafted another piece of legislation also. And inside of that legislation, we also talked about or any other alternative means of transportation. Was that lane explored, or are we focusing on passenger rail, which I'm completely okay with. Have we taken a look at anything else or any other alternatives other than an underground loop?
So the $500,000 is essentially looking at a proof of concept. So they really are at the initial stages of that effort. But we have a whole division that's we're involved with transportation, passenger rail, and freight. So we deal with, as was asked about the short lines, we work with in those regards. And we work with all of our urban areas on urban transit, as well as our rural areas on more demand response. So we're fully engaged in all aspects of public transportation.
Okay. And I thank you for doing that. If you can keep us abreast, and also if you don't mind sending the latest update to the chairman, for the chairman to get it to us as well. And if you guys want to go ahead and make the Memphis to Nashville line the priority, we'll be okay with that too, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Sparks, you're recognized.
Chairman or Commissioner, I appreciate your time. Y'all always very attentive. Thank you to Jay that always gets back with us. I want to pick up back what Dr. Baum had talked about, I guess he's alluding to bonding projects. I think we're one of 6 that do not bond projects. And I got to ask you the question at the annual meeting we did, and appreciate that. Could an argument not be made if you'd have bonded a few projects pre-COVID, pre-fiscal year 2019 with all your concrete pipe increased 101%, guardrail up 80%, concrete up 77%, labor up 56%, concrete catch basins up 55%, steel up 55%, aggregate up 49%, hot mix asphalt 49%, earthwork 45%, and pavement markings up 39%. It just seems like, because we're 38.5 billion behind, some say 58 billion. It just seems like I don't know if we're doing more for less. My father always instilled in me to pay cash for everything. I had to borrow money to buy my first house. I had to borrow money to start my first business. Are we really maximizing and leveraging, like Chairman Hawk talked about? Are we really doing the most we can with less?
Well, so to the last question, I'm confident we are doing as much as we can with the funding that we have, and I can show the numbers, and we'll stand behind those numbers. As far as the question about should we be doing this or should we be doing that, I'm going to leave the policy making to the policymakers. Our job at the DOT is whatever is decided to give us, to fund us, I'm going to make the best use of it possible.
Yes, sir. Going back also, another question is for the Nashville Loop, BNA Loop, which I think is brilliant. No tax dollars are being used for that, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's thinking outside the box. That's being creative. Elon Musk, I like the guy. I like how he thinks. I see where Vegas is doing this and looking at expanding, going out to 68 miles, I believe. What is the potential of bringing something like that, whether it's Knoxville or Rutherford County, which our congestion, as you know, is just terrible. And I worry about not only my kids, I worry about my grandkids and what they're going to face trying to travel Nashville. To leverage those private dollars like that and to think creatively, what else could we do or your department do or this legislative body do to explore that kind of creativeness of what the Loop's done and it's going to do in Nashville and what they've done in Vegas?
Well, again, I think we are as a DOT on the, we are very active on the national level about whatever innovations are out there and available to us to maximize every opportunity we have. I think in terms of the Vegas Loop or the Music City Loop here, those are private facilities. Our role in that is one where we are allowing the use of TDOT right away for them to operate that facility, provided they meet the conditions of a lease agreement and a grading permit. Our purview with that is the state right away itself. It is not a public transportation system. That said, there is definitely a benefit to that system from a transportation perspective. I've actually ridden the system myself in Vegas. Now in Vegas, it is a little bit different. That's what's there in Vegas now is not on Nevada. Sorry.
No, you're good.
She always corrects me. It's Nevada. It's Nevada. I know. I'm trying to catch myself. I just, it is what it is, from the South. But anyway, they're not on state-owned right-of-way out there. They're actually on convention property and Clark County property. So it's a little bit different when you start using public right-of-way that has been bought using federal funds, which is the situation we're in. So again, I think it's one piece of that puzzle. And I think what we have to do as transportation practitioners up here before you is continue to look for ways that we can supplement or augment our transportation system with things that get folks off of our facilities or divert them to other places. So we're going to stay in contact with all of those types of technologies that are out there.
Yes. Last question, Chairman. If we could, speaking of rail going to Chattanooga or Memphis, is the right-of-way already there, or would the state have to buy right-of-way for additional passenger rail?
I'll let, so the right-of-way that's there is owned by the Class 1 railroads. So it is not state right-of-way. It is not public right-of-way. Preston?
Yeah, that is part of this first study, is to understand that. So you're looking at both understanding the freight operations, the availability of track, where you might need double track. That's also would take part as part of that study.
Thanks, sir.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. We don't have any traffic problems in Nashville, so I appreciate all that you all are doing. But I will say this, I do thank you for the work you're doing and for the projection of how we get to where we're trying to get in a certain time, and also the financial piece. I know many of us do struggle with, around this time of year, the potholes. And so I do want to give a shout out. Myself, Senator Oliver, and Representative Dixie had a town hall this past Saturday, and Jay came out, did a great job, even explaining to the people there the process and why we have to do a code fix now. Yeah. And the process. So those participatory actions are good for the community, because oftentimes hearing it from the department supports what we've been saying, and give us a chance to even ask questions that we may not have time to ask in this space, because everybody's not on finance. And so when you have a situation where members can ask, so I just want to say thank you for that space you give them to go out into our districts and to answer those questions and to make themselves available even beyond Monday through Friday timeline, because I know it's not always on the weekday we can do it. So again, thank you for the work you all do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Members, I have no one else on the list until Leader Cochran just got recognized. I'm going to start closing. I'll start closing my eyes when I ask that. If does anyone have? Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
I thought I was already on there. I'm sorry. All right, really fast. Going back to, let's see, slide 27, when we're talking about the states and their different percentages of their funding. So I'm assuming that's an annual average. So do you have an idea? You've asked for 25 million recurring this year, right? That's the current request. what would the recurring have to be to get us to even Texas's level, where the state's at 67%, as opposed to where we're at 49%? So what would the recurring have to increase to get us to that level?
So here's the way I would say, just like I said earlier, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to look at what TASER comes back with of what the true need is. I hear a lot all the time about we need this, we need that. I think that's one of the things we need to look at. But there's no question that over time that recurring is going to have to increase to keep pace with the need.
Right. But regardless of what TASER said, if that chart right there is based on an annual average, what would ours have to right now, as we sit here today, based on how much we provide you annually on average, how much would that recurring have to increase as we sit here right now?
So I don't have a direct answer for you, although I could, as an engineer, depends on what the givens are in figuring out the algebra. But here's what I would say about this. One of the things and I'll keep saying this, every state is a little bit different. Okay. So if you consider North Carolina, every road in North Carolina is overseen by the DOT. Every subdivision, every city street, everything is overseen by the DOT. They also operate rail in North Carolina. So these have to be used they have to be looked at for what they are. They are a guide. And the point here is that regardless of what that mix is, the fundamental thing that's true across here is additional or more reliance on the federal funds puts states in a position to be less flexible.
Okay. All right. I think I mean, maybe at some point, if you could give me a ballpark of what you think the recommended recurring would, if in your ideal situation. And you
Absolutely.
Just get that to
Be
me.
happy to do
Awesome.
that.
I think that's all the questions.
Thank you, Leader. Members, that's all I have. Let me say this. We're done. Before we are, let me say this. Let me go back. I'd be remiss if I didn't say, of course, up in Region 1 manager up there, Dexter Justice, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what a void, his death is going to be up there. Such a good guy. Had many, many years up there for T-Dot, but I can tell you we're certainly going to miss him up there, and I know you and the T-Dot family is going to do as well, but I certainly want to continue to remember the Justice family. So
Thank you for that.
all. Appreciate y'all. All right, without objection, we will go back into session. And that does complete our calendar for today. Budget hearings will resume tomorrow, February the 10th at 3 p.m. here in House Hearing Room 1. Do we have any further business coming before the committee? Hearing none, without objection, we stand adjourned. We're adjourned. I didn't hear